The constant buzz of social media is a modern parade of distraction, yet it echoes the timeless struggle to maintain inner calm amidst chaos. Imagine Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, observing our scrolling rituals. Would he see wisdom or just another distraction hiding our true selves? What if, in his quiet reflections, he had something to say about the noise we surround ourselves with daily? Stay with me as we explore how ancient virtues might guide us through today's digital storm, revealing insights that could help us find stillness even in the busiest feeds. The Stoic perspective on virtue and self-control. In a world where the constant hum of notifications and the allure of instant affirmation seem inevitable, the ancient wisdom of Marcus Aurelius offers a surprising lens through which to view social media. To him, virtue was the highest good: self-control, wisdom, justice, and courage, values that remain largely unchanged despite the shifting landscape of digital interaction. Social media, with its endless scroll and tendency to foster comparison or resentment, tests these virtues continuously. Marcus might say that true strength lies in resisting the pull to react impulsively, to seek validation from fleeting likes and comments, and instead, to anchor oneself firmly in reason and integrity. The core of a Stoic approach emphasizes understanding what is within our control and accepting what is not. On social media, many of us obsess over reactions. How many followers, how many shares, how quickly our post gets noticed. Yet, in Marcus's perspective, this preoccupation is a diversion from what genuinely matters: cultivating our character. If one can abstain from the urge to chase superficial approval and focus on personal growth, practicing self-control becomes a form of rebellion against the chaos and superficiality of online life. Such discipline doesn't mean avoiding social media altogether, but approaching it with a calm mind and deliberate intent, recognizing that real virtue is preserved not by external validation, but by internal harmony. Irony begins to seep in when contemplating how digital platforms, designed to capture our attention, can serve as a kind of modern test of the Stoic virtues. Marcus might chuckle at how people spend hours polishing their image, craftily avoiding confrontation with themselves. Social media amplifies the temptations to envy or anger, yet it also offers an opportunity for reflection, if one chooses to see it. Each like or comment becomes an external thing that we must recognize as indifferent in Stoic terms, neither good nor bad, merely passing phenomena. True self-control is demonstrated in how we choose to respond, perhaps with humor, patience, or silence, rather than giving into the reactive storms that social media often stirs up. In the end, Marcus Aurelius would likely remind us that the discipline of virtue, especially self-control, is a daily practice, whether in a marketplace or a digital feed. Virtue isn't about renouncing social media, but about using it wisely and with moderation, avoiding the trap of excess and emotional upheaval. If one can develop an inner calm that isn't swayed by the shifting tides of online opinion, it becomes possible to see social media for what it truly is: a mirror reflecting our desires and weaknesses, not our worth. Through this discerning lens, the digital realm becomes a proving ground for the virtues, a reminder that true strength rests within, guarded by humility, restraint, and a steady turn toward what is good and virtuous. Marcus Aurelius's views on external opinions and social influence. In the quiet moments of reflection, Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that external opinions are fleeting and outside of true control. Today, such wisdom feels oddly relevant. Social media, with its relentless stream of judgments and validation-seeking, acts as a modern arena for the same human craving for approval. Yet, he might observe with gentle irony that the noise of likes, shares, and comments is no different than the tumult of a bustling marketplace in ancient Rome, where reputation was often built on superficial impressions rather than genuine virtue. For Aurelius, the world's praise or blame is secondary. It doesn't define the course of our internal stability. If he were alive to witness society's fixation, he would likely caution that aligning your sense of self with external validation is akin to anchoring a ship to a sinking buoy, destined for instability. He would probably note that social influence, much like the shifting opinions of the masses, is a distraction that tempts us away from true wisdom. As he often emphasized, one must cultivate an inner citadel, impervious to the winds of societal opinion. Just as he advised soldiers to focus on their discipline regardless of the chaos around them, he might suggest that a person on social media should cultivate clarity about what truly matters: virtue, reason, and integrity, rather than the ephemeral applause of strangers. When people measure their worth in likes, it becomes all too easy to lose sight of genuine self-awareness. Instead of seeking approval, Aurelius would advise viewing external opinions as signals in the environment, but not as the compass by which to steer one's moral ship. Furthermore, he would probably have a wry take on the idea that social media amplifies external influence to a dizzying degree. Popularity becomes a form of superficial gold, bright but hollow, whose glow quickly fades once the screen is turned off. He might observe that the rush to conform for societal approval is rooted in the same impulse that drives humans to chase fleeting fantasies instead of enduring truths. For Aurelius, mastery over oneself involves recognizing these distractions without attachment and gently turning inward for guidance. The real test, he might say, is in maintaining equanimity when external opinions threaten to sway the soul. If the individual understands that external praise or blame are external, neither good nor bad, their influence diminishes, allowing inner peace to become the real victory. In the end, Aurelius's message might be surprisingly concise. Don't let external opinions govern your internal state. Social media is an endless echo chamber of external influence, an arena where the loudest often win, but not necessarily the wisest or the most virtuous. Cultivate resilience against this noise. Focus on your own rational judgment. Recognize that external approval is often impermanent, and that true strength lies in aligning your actions with reason and virtue, not with the shifting winds of social influence. If he were to witness the digital age, he'd probably chuckle quietly at the irony that all the shouting in the world doesn't replace the calm of knowing oneself. The role of reason and reflection in social media usage. Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic philosopher renowned for valuing reason and self-awareness, would likely approach social media with a mixture of cautious skepticism and pragmatic reflection. To him, the endless stream of notifications, likes, and opinions, the digital hall of mirrors, would serve as both a mirror and a distraction. He might see social media as a modern arena where passions and superficial judgments thrive, often at the expense of clear thinking. Yet, within this chaos, he would encourage the cultivation of rational discipline as a shield against being swept away by transient emotions or the desire for external validation. Given his emphasis on reflection, Marcus would urge users to employ reason as a steady compass. Before posting or commenting, he might suggest pausing long enough to ask if one's actions serve truth, virtue, or clarity of mind. When faced with outrage or envy triggered by the curated images and narratives shared online, he would remind us to temper our judgments by questioning their origin. Is this impulse driven by genuine understanding or by fleeting emotional reactions? Is this comment or like contributing to one's tranquility or disturb it? Reflection becomes a daily discipline, an internal check against the superficial, quick-response culture that social media often aggravates. He might also observe that social media reflects the human tendency to construct personal narratives to gain approval, which could be a trap for those seeking external validation. Marcus, who believed true happiness came from within, would likely see the pursuit of likes as a distraction from the pursuit of virtue. To him, reason sharpens the perspective needed to distinguish between genuine connection and shallow engagement. He might suggest viewing social media less as a place to display oneself and more as an opportunity for mindful dialogue, an arena for sharing wisdom, not vanity. Making space for that reflection could transform an overwhelming digital landscape into a tool for growth rather than a trap for ego. Finally, Marcus Aurelius would probably advocate for a conscious approach to the digital realm, one grounded in the Stoic ideal of living in accordance with nature and reason. Recognizing that social media is an extension of human nature, often irrational and driven by passions, he would remind us to remain anchored in our true selves. Use technology to foster understanding, not to feed superficial desires. Let reason be your guide, and when the noise becomes too much, step back and reflect. In doing so, social media transforms from a distraction into a mirror for self-improvement and a testing ground for our ability to remain virtuous amidst chaos. Detachment and emotional resilience in the digital age. In a world brimming with notifications, likes, and endless streams of information, the ancient practice of detachment takes on a new dimension. Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic philosopher and emperor, might gently remind us that the chaos of social media is not so different from the tumult of daily life. Only now, it's magnified by the instant gratification and exposure to others' curated selves. He believed that our emotional turmoil often stems from investing too much in external events that are beyond our control. Today, that principle suggests we should notice how visceral reactions to online praise or criticism can distort our inner calm, creating a cycle of dependence on fleeting validation. Recognizing the transient nature of digital praise reminds us that virtue and tranquility are rooted within, not in the ever-changing landscapes of virtual approval. A key element of Stoic resilience involves maintaining a firm sense of internal sovereignty, being grounded regardless of external circumstances. Social media, with its endless scroll of polarized opinions and superficial judgments, offers ample opportunities to lose ourselves in emotional reactions. Marcus might advise viewing these digital flutters with gentle irony, knowing that what truly matters resides not in the reactions we garner, but in how we choose to interpret them. The philosopher's insight that we are masters of our perceptions suggests that cultivating a mental space where social media does not dictate our mood is an act of resilience. It's about observing the rush of feelings, questioning their importance, and consciously deciding to return focus inward to our rational mind and moral virtue, rather than the dopamine-driven cycles of approval. Ironically, in a time when so much effort is put into curating an ideal persona online, Marcus would probably suggest that such efforts are antithetical to true resilience. Authentic strength comes from accepting ourselves as we are, rather than trying to craft an image that conforms to societal standards. 40 likes or 400, it makes little difference. Detachment does not mean indifference, but rather a clarity about what matters and what does not. This is especially relevant amid the digital noise that constantly beckons us to compare, compete, or even despair over shadowy metrics of success. Marcus's wisdom, if applied here, encourages us to see social media as a mirror that reflects our desires rather than defines our worth, fostering emotional resilience by anchoring ourselves in the unchangeable virtues of reason, patience, and moderation. Furthermore, Marcus would suggest that a resilient attitude involves recognizing the impermanence of all things, including the digital world. Just as he advised contemplating the fleeting nature of life to diminish attachment to worldly possessions, he would undoubtedly advise brushing off the ephemeral waves of online outrage or euphoria. These moments, he might say, are like passing shadows, temporary and insubstantial. Developing mental habits that observe these fluctuations calmly can build an armor against the volatility of social media. In the end, cultivating detachment in this hyper-connected age isn't about shutting out the digital world, but about engaging with it wisely, acknowledging its influence while not allowing it to disturb our inner tranquility. It's an ancient art that, surprisingly, remains profoundly relevant amidst the relentless digital storm. The impact of social media on inner peace and moral character. In a time when the digital realm dominantly captures human attention, the voice of Marcus Aurelius might resonate with a quiet irony. He understood the fleeting nature of external approval and the importance of cultivating an inner fortress of tranquility. Social media, in its essence, amplifies this struggle. It promises connection, yet often delivers distraction and superficiality. The constant barrage of notifications, likes, and comments acts like a siren song, pulling the soul away from reflective stillness, an essential state for moral growth and inner peace. Aurelius might observe that in these virtual spaces, people often chase applause from an audience of strangers, losing sight of their own intrinsic virtues in the pursuit of validation. He would likely point out that social media puts a magnifying glass on human weaknesses, vain comparison, envy, impatience, making them all the easier to indulge. The wise man recognizes that true moral character is built on resilience and self-control, qualities strained by endless scrolling. Every post, every comment becomes a test of patience, humility, and temperance. The Stoic would remind us that virtue is cultivated in the quiet moments, those moments not captured by filters or shared with followers. Excessive online engagement, therefore, risks eroding these foundations, replacing genuine moral reflection with superficial displays meant to impress others rather than oneself. Furthermore, Aurelius might express concern about how social media fosters a distorted sense of self-importance. It elevates ego, feeding the illusion that one's worth depends on outward recognition rather than inward virtue. When virtual approval becomes the metric for success, moral humility often takes a back seat. The Stoic ideal is to be unmoved by praise or blame. Yet social media constantly blurs this line, encouraging reactions tied more to ego than to authenticity. In this light, he would caution that real peace comes from aligning one's actions with reason and virtue, not with the shifting sands of online popularity. Recognizing this, we might see social media as a mirror that exposes our inner tendencies, urging us to be vigilant against the passions that threaten to erode moral integrity. Finally, the irony linking antiquity and digital life might not be lost on Aurelius. The philosopher's meditations often emphasize that happiness derives from within, unshaken by external chaos. Yet, social media creates a paradox. It seems to promise happiness through external validation but often delivers the opposite. To remain steady amid this chaos, Aurelius would advise cultivating a perspective rooted in Stoic indifference to circumstances and a focus on virtue. In doing so, one can navigate social media's tumult without sacrificing peace or moral character. After all, in the end, the only truly enduring achievement is mastery over oneself, an achievement no follower count or viral post can ever bestow. Practical Stoic strategies for navigating social media. Social media, with its relentless stream of notifications and the constant hum of comparison, often feels like a modern Stoic's greatest challenge. Marcus Aurelius might have observed that the frenzy of digital interactions mirrors the chaotic, indifferent nature of external events, those things outside our direct control that threaten to disturb inner peace. To navigate this, he would advise recognizing that your responses, not the content itself, are what truly matter. When scrolling through endless feeds, one could silently remind oneself that the opinions and reactions of others are not inherently ours to take personally. They are, in Stoic terms, external impressions that we can choose to accept or decline. Practically, Marcus might suggest limiting exposure intentionally. He believed that mindless indulgence in external stimuli leads to emotional turbulence. Applying that wisdom today could mean setting specific time frames for social media use. Short intervals, like a disciplined pause after completing a task, serve as moments to reflect rather than react. Instead of falling into the trap of seeking validation through likes or comments, a Stoic would remind oneself of the importance of internal virtues, truthfulness, moderation, patience, values that do not depend on the digital applause. For example, if someone posts inflammatory content rather than engage defensively or impulsively, practicing indifference to such externalities can preserve one's tranquility. Irony whispers that social media is designed to capture our attention, yet Stoicism teaches us that our attention is a finite resource. Marcus would probably advise wielding it wisely, cultivating awareness of where your mental energy goes. A useful technique might involve periodically asking oneself, what is within my control here? In doing so, we acknowledge that the algorithm's motives are beyond us, and that spending mental energy worrying about viral trends or internet outrage is ultimately unproductive. Instead, focus on your own reactions. Are they aligned with reason, virtue, and your own judgment? This internal calibration can transform social media from a source of distraction into a mirror that reflects your priorities rather than dilutes them. Humor might be the most ancient Stoic tool of all. Marcus, known for his dry wit, would likely advise approaching social media with a healthy dose of irony, knowing that much of it is a theatrical display, a fleeting spectacle of human folly. To remain unaffected, one could practice detachment, remembering that the fleeting nature of online approval is no different from a passing breeze, here and gone. Strength comes from understanding the transient, and from anchoring oneself in unchangeable principles. When faced with negativity or noise, a Stoic would focus on internal clarity, reminding oneself that digital storms are no more real than shadows on the cave wall, and that peace comes from within, not from external validation. Usnavnoi, Rise Jill 7. In the quiet contemplation of Marcus Aurelius, the endless scroll of social media would evoke a mixture of contemplative patience and subtle irony. He might observe that in many ways, these digital spaces mirror the same human tendencies that cause distress, distraction, and superficiality, only now amplified by convenience and immediacy. To him, the core challenge lies in maintaining inner tranquility and virtue amidst the cacophony of notifications, likes, and comparisons. The Stoic would suggest that true happiness comes not from accumulating virtual approval, but from aligning one's soul with reason and virtue, regardless of the noise surrounding us. The question he might pose is whether social media serves as a tool for growth or simply another mirror reflecting our surface selves and fleeting passions. Skeptically but wisely, Aurelius would likely acknowledge that social media, like many external things, is neither inherently good nor evil. Rather, it's a preferred indifference, neither to be rejected nor embraced blindly. His teachings emphasize simplicity and focus on what remains constant, our rational nature and virtue. The constant barrage of curated identities and idealized images might be seen as a test of our self-awareness. When one encounters envy or FOMO online, the Stoic approach would be to remind oneself that these emotions stem from misplaced values, seeking validation externally rather than cultivating internal resilience. To him, the key is recognizing the impermanence and illusion of social validation and anchoring oneself in the unchanging virtues such as wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. Humor, tinged with irony, might also find its place in Marcus's musings. He might observe that we seem to have developed a strange allegiance to our digital masks, our profiles, likes, comments, as if they are the true self. Yet, beneath all that, he would warn to stay rooted in the knowledge that social media often facilitates superficial exchanges rather than honest dialogue. The Stoic seeks authenticity over performative virtue, and perhaps Marcus would caution that the social media's glossy veneer often clouds the mind, distracting us from the more difficult but more meaningful task of mastering ourselves. In the end, he might concede that if used wisely, like a mirror, social media can reflect our virtues or vices, but it does not define us. What Marcus Aurelius might stress about modern social media is the importance of discernment and intentionality. Just as he urges himself and others to focus on what is within one's control, thoughts, choices, actions, so too would he recommend approaching online life with a clear understanding of its nature and potential pitfalls. The temptation to chase validation or fall prey to superficial trends can be resisted through the exercise of reason. A Stoic would advocate cultivating a digital environment that fosters growth, reflection, and genuine connection, rather than one that feeds vanity or anxiety. Ultimately, Aurelius would remind us that true serenity comes from within and that social media presents an opportunity to practice virtue or a distraction from it, depending on how we engage with it. In contemplating what Marcus Aurelius might say about social media, it's clear that the ancient framework of Stoic wisdom offers timeless guidance. He would remind us to cultivate inner tranquility amidst the noise, to remember that our virtue isn't measured by likes or comments, but by our capacity for patience, humility, and self-awareness. The fleeting nature of digital validation pales in comparison to the enduring pursuit of a virtuous life, one rooted in reason and resilience. If we take a step back and reflect, truly reflect, perhaps we'll realize that the endless scroll isn't the path to wisdom, but a detour from it. Connecting with others and ourselves with intention, rather than distraction, turns social media into a mirror of our true character. Thank you for joining this quiet contemplation. If this resonated, stay tuned. More reflections on ancient philosophy meeting modern life are coming soon, helping us navigate the digital age with a little more presence and a lot more clarity. Remember, the wisdom of the past can serve as a gentle guide in this noisy world, quietly reminding us to seek virtue above all else.